Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Marketing Mondays. It is July 18th, and this is Marketing Mondays number 61. So, we're going to get going here in a second. As always, I'm going to take a moment to ping some people, some of the groups in, and we will get going. But I appreciate everybody for coming in today, and hope you guys are going to enjoy the episode today. We've got some great questions. So looking forward to getting into it. So anyway, good to see some people popping in really quickly here. So good morning, David. Good to see you. As always, if you're new to the Marketing Mondays, if you put a question into the comments, we will get to that live. We will do every effort we can to get to those live. If you have any follow-up questions on anything that I'm covering during the episode, put those in the comments. I will see them come up on my screen so I can answer those. We do get questions that come in through the week, but we always give a preference and a priority to the people that are here live and are asking questions live. So with that, again, all you have to do is throw it in the comments and I will see it. So good morning. Good to see you, James. Good to see everybody popping in. So we're going to go ahead and get going here and we will take it from there. So I got some decent questions that I hope you guys are really going to like. So first question that came in this last week was Google reviews. How can I get more of them and how can I maximize the benefit? Actually, David, who's in the things now, him and his wife have done a great job of getting a lot of Google reviews for their company. But I'm going to go ahead and give you a crack on a couple different things you can do. First of all, as I would say, to be consistent and have a protocol in place to ask for Google reviews. Whether that's something you have in your shop, like a QR code somebody can scan that takes them right to your Google review page, whether you follow up with an email asking for a Google review if they're happy with the service that they provided. Whatever the case is, have a system in place to gather Google reviews. Don't just hope that somebody's going to be so happy with your service that they're going to voluntarily seek out your Google page and leave you a review. You have to remove any friction from the process. You have to take them right to your page. You have to send them either an email with a link, give them a QR code they can scan at the time they're checking out at your shop or something like that. But you have to make it frictionless. You have to, if they're gonna, unless they really are just super enamored with your service, they're typically not going to jump through hoops to leave you a good Google review. So you have to make it easy for them to do that by taking them right to the page and making it very easy for them to do that. The second thing, as far as this question is, how can I get more reviews? I think that's pretty straightforward. One of the things I just said is, try to create a situation to ask people for Google reviews. Real quick, I'm going to sidebar here and just say there are a lot of different places you can get reviews. You can get reviews on Facebook. You can get reviews on Yelp. You can get reviews on Google, as we're talking about right now. So what, is there a preference? Is there a difference? I happen to believe, this is my personal belief, that you're always better to gather a Google review versus the other reviews. Now, if somebody leaves you a review on Facebook, leaves you a review on Yelp, you're certainly not going to turn those reviews down. It's always better to have a review. But if you have a preference of where you're really going to try to pull reviews from, I would typically say that I would rather have a Google review than anything. And the reason is that the Google review actually plays in a way into the Google SEO algorithm and where your company is going to show up with regard to Google ranking. Now, Google doesn't tell us exactly how that all works. However, there's been a lot of research that has been done that show that companies that have a lot of reviews that are positive reviews in general tend to show up better on Google, all other things being equal. If they have a lot of reviews that are good reviews, they will tend to show up higher than companies without reviews. So because of not only the fact that you get a good review, but the fact that it has a secondary benefit in the form of search engine optimization, I would always recommend a Google review. Now, once you have a review, is there a way that you could do things to maximize that? One of the things I would say that Google loves is when people interact and use the platform. So what I try to say to people is take time once a week. You don't have to do it every day, once a week, once every other week. Go into your Google review page and respond to the positive reviews or the negative reviews for that matter. If somebody has left you a review, take a moment to say, hey, thank you for the kind words. We appreciate your business and your great review. If it's a negative review, maybe say, hey, sorry you feel that way. Maybe we should connect so we can figure out a way to satisfy you with this transaction. Whatever the case may be, respond to the review. Google likes to see that companies are interacting with other companies that are leaving them a review. So if you get reviews, I would go in there, and you don't have to write a paragraph, but a sentence, 2 sentences maybe, respond to the review. I think that's going to help you get the most out of your reviews. It's going to, if people are looking at your reviews, it speaks a lot about your company that you're going in there and thanking people or responding to a negative review. So it gets you the most benefit. Also, a couple of people in the comments are mentioning something about TintWiz, which is kind of a CRM that's used specifically in the window film industry. There's the nice thing about that is it makes it really easy once you complete a job to send out something to request a review. I think any tool like that, like TintWiz or other CRM programs that you can utilize to automate the system of trying to collect reviews is a positive thing. Because here's the thing. When you're asking for something like this, you're not going to get 100% participation. It's just not going to happen. So you have to it's a numbers game. If you ask 10 people for a review, you may get 1 or 2 reviews. If you ask 100 people for a review, you may get 7 to 10 reviews. So again, the reality is it's a numbers game. You're not going to get 100% of the people that do business with you to leave you a review. But if you consistently ask, if you're consistent in the process of asking for reviews, you stand a good chance of weekly, monthly, you're going to continue to see your reviews rise. So thank you guys for chiming in on that. I absolutely love that idea of with TintWiz or any other tool like a CRM in another industry or whatever to automate that process, because it just, to remember to do it is one thing. To have it automated, take advantage of technology is all that much better. So Tim says, I always respond, but I try not to say the same thing all the time. And that's hard when you have so many reviews. I agree, Tim. It definitely can be difficult. I agree with you wholeheartedly to not say the same thing every time and seem like it's some sort of automated bot. But, again, it doesn't have to be, a simple thank you for the great review or something along those lines. It's going to it's an acknowledgement that somebody's taken the time to leave you a review. The least you could do is leave a response or a reply to their review when they've taken the time to leave you a review. So again, I always try to tell people, try not to overthink it. Don't try to send a bunch of sentences, maybe even comment if you remember the project, maybe comment about something about it. Let's say it's an automotive project. Say, hey, Tim, thanks for the great review. We really enjoyed working on your 2015 Corvette, or whatever the case may be. That way you can make it different. You can make it personalized without having to say the same thing all the time, but without also having to write 3 or 4 sentences. So hopefully that helps. Thanks for the feedback there, guys. Hopefully that question, you got some good benefit from that. We have another question here. It says, I have heard not all content on my website is good for SEO. Can you explain what content might be bad for my SEO? It's a great question. So a couple different rules of thumb, and this is nothing this is just Google best practices. A couple different things you want to be aware of. One of the things that Google looks out for and does not benefit you the way that it can is what they would call thin content, like THIN, thin content. And what that means is content where Google views it as somebody that's trying to game the system, if you will. You're trying to create a lot of pages or posts on your website that are maybe specific to a particular geographic area or some product or services, but you're not putting a whole lot there. So there's not a lot of words or whatever. You're just creating a page and SEOing that page to try to get a Google result. But there's not a lot of, meat and potatoes there. There's just basically the titles and things like that. So one of the things you want to think about is Google typically looks for content that's over 300 words to surpass what they would consider maybe like the thin content threshold. Now, ideally, it would be over 600 words, and there's even studies that are out there that say the more words, the better. So over 1,000 words, even the better. But what you want to avoid is trying to have content on your website where you don't have a lot of words. You have less than 300 words, because Google's going to view that in a way that you're trying to create a bunch of content that's SEO'd, but it's not legitimate. You're not really putting in the time to create the content. You're just trying to game the system. So again, they call that thin content. So if you're going to put content on your website, whether it's a project portfolio, a news article, anything like that on your website, be thinking in lines of 300 words plus. And the more, the better. If it's 600 words, that much better. But try to make sure you're not going to be below that 300 word threshold. Now, again, if you think about that, you might be like 300 words, that's kind of a lot. But again, in a lot of content, you're going to give people information on how to contact you and a variety of different things. So, you can get to 300 words, if you spend a little bit of time to do that. And it's not too hard. If you have something to write about and then you include contact information, things like that, you can get there. But again, think about it as 300 words is the minimum. And ideally, if you can get over 600 words, all the better. So that's one thing you want to avoid on your website if you're adding content, is thin content. The other thing you want to avoid is what's called duplicate content. And that's web content on your website where you have the same content in numerous spots on your website. So you're duplicating a page in an effort to try to get to act like there's more content on your website than there is. Now, there are ways you can create location pages and things like that on your website and do it in such a way to where you would have blocks of text that aren't duplicated. They're being displayed from one common location. So from a viewer standpoint, you see all the text, but it's not duplicated. What you want to avoid, and what it's always good to think about it from Google's perspective, what they're trying to avoid by having these situations in place. What they don't want somebody to do is to try to game the system by, say, taking a page about a product or service and duplicating it 100 times to give Google the impression that there's 100 pages of content there, when the reality is there's only one page of content. And then, maybe they tweak one or two things on that page to make that page seem different, but in reality, it's basically 95% the same page. Google would view that as negative or duplicate content, and they would not give you any credit for those other pages. So you can go through the process. There's a lot of talk that's been out there about, is there a duplicate content penalty? Everything I've read tells me that there's not necessarily a duplicate content penalty, i.e., does Google negatively rate your website if you have duplicate content? They just don't give you any positive thing for having the duplicate content. So you can go through a lot of work to create this duplicate content and not get any positive benefit from it. So don't think about it as Google's going to penalize you as much for having the duplicate content. It's just a waste of your time is what it is. So always try to have enough fresh content. If you want to have pages for locations and things like that, talk a little bit about that location. Create, use different pictures on that location. Create enough of a difference in that page to where it's not viewed by Google as being duplicate content. Tim asks, how important is it to have great speed on your website? I'm looking at a bunch of big sites, and there's a speed test is low too. A lot of people talk about getting your site fast, but you lose so much to do that. Tim, site speed is definitely part of what Google looks at with regard to search engine optimization. Again, there's a balance there of having, the content you want and your website display the way you want it to with regard to having fast. What you want is, you have to make sure you're doing the things you can to have your website respond quickly. If somebody goes to pull up your website and it's a blank screen for several seconds before it even starts to populate your website, that's a problem. Your website can always be faster, and you can start to lose a little bit of the context. And I think the content is you're getting to by trying to just solely focus on speed. So we try to look at a balanced approach. It's not all about speed, but your website can't be slow and sluggish either. Now, there's a couple of things that impact speed. One would be your site structure, like how your website was built, the size of files that are on your website. A lot of times when you consider that 80+% of your website web traffic is being consumed on mobile, you don't have to have a 5 megabyte size picture on your website to display properly on mobile. So a lot of people just use images that are way too big. So it causes your website to be sluggish to show the website because their files are way too big. So they can minimize those files and still get just as good of a user experience because the size of a 800 kilobyte file looks just as good on mobile and even desktop as the 5 megabyte file, and you've reduced that file by over 80%. So you want to look at things like that you can do to keep the user experience good and increase your site speed. The other thing is to look at your hosting platform. A lot of people just naturally go with the cheapest hosting platform. You go with one of the big names and you go with their $9.99 a month or $12.99 a month package. But typically what that's going to be is your website's going to be put on a shared server with a lot of other websites. And depending on what the traffic is with those other websites, it could impact how fast or how slow your website loads as well. So I would recommend spending for a premium hosting service that's going to put you on a faster server with more RAM, more cache, all those things like that, so that you could actually, your website is not being shared by as many other websites and it can serve your website faster, number one. The other thing, which is a little bit of a sidebar to that, is make sure your website has an SSL certificate, which also impacts both user experience and search engine results. And an SSL certificate, depending on the type of service you have, may be included in the package, or it may be another $5 to $10 a month. So typically what you want to be looking at is a situation where you have a balance of page speed and user experience. Because if you have a horrible user experience, but your website's fast, that's not necessarily a great thing either, because people are going to arrive at your website, not see what they're looking for, or not have a good experience and bounce out of there. And if a lot of people are bouncing out of your website, that could be a negative SEO thing as well. So everything in balance is what we try to look at. It's not all one direction. You've got to look at a lot of different things, and it's got to be a well-rounded website. So a couple different things came in. Wayne Merriman says, I have a private server. That's fine, Wayne. The only thing I would say about that I would caution against is if it's one server, like in one closet, and something happens to that server, your website could be down, and it could be down for an extended period of time. We actually, through our company, we host probably close to 200 websites for companies that we work with. And we use a server farm, if you want to call it that, called SiteGround. All one word, SITE ground. And they have server space all over the world, and they have backup server space. So if say you lose power in one of those areas where there's a server farm, they can redirect that traffic to another server farm so that those websites aren't down. There's also backups that are being done on a regular basis. So if something happens to your server at SiteGround, at least with the sites that we host, there's a backup done every day for 7 straight consecutive days. Then on the 8th day, the one that's 7th oldest gets deleted and goes with the newest one. So, there's nothing wrong with having your own server. Just make sure you have some safety protocols in place. Eric also put in the comments a website that allows you to check your page speed. Again, there's even, I think, a Google one that'll test your page speed as well. The only thing I would say is, again, don't get so caught up in that you overlook everything else. I've done some testing on some very large websites that are from companies that are like high tech. And if there was a way that they could have it done in a certain way, they certainly would. Companies like Apple and things like that. And when you test their websites, they don't test at the very best level for speed either, but they're trying to balance user experience and what they want their website to look like and do with that speed. So again, you can't get unilaterally, focused on one thing to the point where other things on your website suffer. Shamal asks, tell me how to remove people that call you if they don't like the price about your services. They give you a bad review on Google. I haven't found a way to get rid of those. Unfortunately, in a day and age of reviews, there are some people that are going to leave, non-credible reviews just because they don't like your price, which isn't really the way that it's designed to be. It's supposed to be somebody that's actually taking part in your service and they're reviewing your service. So it's not all, unfortunately, I know that people do it. Just leave a review saying your price was too high or whatever. You can always submit to Google that, this isn't even a customer of mine, whatever. You could submit an appeal, and sometimes Google will take those down and sometimes they won't. Google wants to make sure they're not eliminating bad reviews on the regular basis. And there's not an easy way to do that because then it eliminates the credibility of their reviews. If it's easy for you to remove a negative review, then it starts to hit the credibility of Google. So typically, if you have one of those reviews and it's illegitimate, what I would typically recommend is to submit it to Google to say, hey, this isn't a credible review. Maybe Google will remove it. Maybe they won't. I would reply to that review in a very proactive and positive way, not in a snide way. I would just say, sorry you feel that way. There's a lot that goes into our pricing, including quality products and installation training and everything to make sure we're providing the greatest overall value to our customers. And, sometimes that means that our pricing is higher than other companies that you may look at, but we try to bring the best overall value. I would try to turn that negative review into something positive because a lot of the people, the person that left that review felt like they got their satisfaction by leaving you a negative review. But a lot of the people that are going to look at your reviews are going to read those reviews. So the way you respond to that negative review, you can actually take a negative and turn it into a positive where somebody looks at the way you responded to it. And actually that's appealing to them. And you've actually taken what somebody meant for bad and actually turned it into something good. So I would look at it like that. But again, you can always turn it into, Google to see if you can get it removed if it's not credible. But again, don't hold your breath. That may or may not happen. Shamal just says, exactly. That's the only thing I don't like about Google. Yeah, I understand, Shamal, but it's part of, I think that's the same with all the other review sites, whether it's Facebook, Yelp, or any of them too. Tim says he saw about the site Eric posted. So anyway, Tim has some comments there. Marcelo actually asked if not related, but did I lose weight? I don't actually think I've lost a lot of weight, Marcelo, but I did shave my beard. So you may be seeing that more than you see the weight loss. It may just be that I shaved my beard. So anyway, let's move on. We've got enough time to probably at least jump into one more question here. I appreciate the questions and the feedback that are coming in. If you have any, please go ahead and put them in there. Here's one. How much should I plan to spend on a good website? So first of all, it all depends, man. That's a question that is impossible to answer with a quick answer. It all depends on what you need a website to do. If it's a shopping cart website, you plan on selling things online, and let's say you have 300 to 400 items or SKUs that you want to have to be available to sell, you're probably going to go with a Shopify-based website, and each one of those items is going to have to be built out and set up on that Shopify site. So if you're expecting a web development company to set all those items up and to build that website, there's time involved. I always tell all the clients we work with that everything's based on time, just like it is in any job. Like if something is going to take our agency 5 hours to do, it's going to cost a certain amount. And if something's going to take us 10 hours to do, it's probably going to cost roughly double that amount. It's based on the amount of time we spend. So if we're building out a relatively simple website with a couple pages, nothing needs to be sold on the website, but it's just a really good, what we would call a slimline website. It looks like $1 million. It's got 3 to 4 pages, and it's fully SEO'd and submitted to the search engines. You're going to be able to come in at a lower amount, maybe $1,000 to $1,200 for a website like that. If you're talking about a Shopify site where you have 500 items that you're trying to sell, and they all need to be SEO'd and the descriptions written and pictures added and things like that, you may be talking, thousands of that, like 10, 20,000. I mean, we've built websites that are significantly up there. You're talking about $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. But when you build those, you're talking about sites that have a lot of different things going on. You have a lot of SKUs. The typical website that we build is going to be on a slimline site, that $1,000 to $1,200 to around $3,000. Those are for basic informational websites that are going to have typically between 3 and 10 pages, fully built out, fully SEO'd, submitted to the search engines on your behalf. So that gives you an idea. That doesn't mean that our price, depending on where you're at, that our price is the gold standard that you need to use at. It's just, I'm giving you some kind of, I don't want to not answer the question by not putting a number on it, but, you're going to get a lot of different questions. To me, the only reason to have a website that costs you, if it's an informational website that you're not selling anything on, that's going to cost you well in excess of $10,000 in 2022, is if you have a lot of different items. So you're going to have a lot of pages, 100 pages on your website or something like that, to where it's going to drive, again, it's time related. If we have to build out 100 pages versus we have to build out 10 pages, there's going to be time involved, and then, ultimately cost involved. So hopefully that answers that. I don't want to use this as something that basically is telling you that, this is what you should pay for a website, because, I don't want to get in that game of setting the price, but that just gives you an idea where we're at and maybe some of the things to keep in mind when you're looking to get pricing for a website. Let me see. We got a couple minutes here. Let me see if I could sneak one more in. Here's kind of a question that came along a little bit with that. Should my website have a blog? So let's go ahead and answer this. We've got enough time to jump into it. First of all, I tend to not be a fan of the word blog, because a lot of people, I don't think when people go to your website, they think to themselves, hey, let's check out this company's blog. So I like things like latest news or, information or something. Depends on what you're going to share there. Like some companies share project portfolio pieces, like jobs they've been working on. They describe the job they've been working on and give details about that. Some companies use it as a way to share news or product information. I just don't care for the word blog, but let's boil it down. Let's just use the word blog to talk about adding content to your website in a format. So I like the idea of having a blog or a latest news or whatever you want to call it, project portfolio thing, because it's going to allow you to add content to your website regularly. And it's going to allow you to SEO those particular pages for unique different things that you want your website to come up for. It also is going to show Google that you're adding content to your website, so your website's active and it's not stale and it's not the same for the last 2.5 years. So I love the idea of having a way to systematically add new content to your website. You want to do that and avoid some of the things we talked about a little bit earlier today, thin content. If you're going to put content on there, make sure it's over 300 words in size. Use pictures that you've optimized. Make the most of it. If you're going to take the time to put the content on there, make the most of it. Use optimized images. Make sure you're not putting on thin content. Make sure that the website, you've got all the appropriate SEO in there. You can also go in and resubmit your what's called your sitemap for your website to Google and other search engines to let them know. They will eventually recrawl your website and see that new content, but there are ways you can actually ping them to let them know there's new content so that they crawl it right away. I would do all those things, and I think adding new content to your website is an excellent idea. you want to be consistent about it. You want to make sure that you make the most of it if you're going to do it. But I absolutely think if you have the ability to do that or you want to do that, it is a way that you can allow your website to have better and better SEO as time goes on. And Google loves to see new things and changes to a website as opposed to the same website that's just stale for a number of years on end. So with that, we are right up against the half an hour. So I was glad I was able to jump in and get those questions asked or answered. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I appreciate all the comments that came in today. If you have any questions that you would like answered in a future episode, go ahead and send them to me at patric@imagnetmgt.com. I'll put that in the comments as soon as we are done here. So you have that. You can send your question to me via email. I'll make sure it gets worked into the next episode, or you can always tune in. We try to make sure that we are here every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we just try to answer as many of your questions as we can in a tight 30-minute time frame. So you can always bring your questions here, answer them in the comments. As you probably saw today, I always try to keep my eyes on the comments and answer those questions while they're coming in. So with that, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate your time this morning. Have a terrific week. Hopefully you guys are in the midst of a great summer, and this is going to be a terrific week. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you later. Take care.